Now the second area, I guess I'm going to run out of the tape here. Back to life's duos that I've hit once or twice in the last few weeks. Life has, as I pointed out in various ways, apparently everything is dichotomous. That there are these duos. All dances take two people. You got two eyes. Stereoscopic vision shows everything that seems to be of any unique human consequence is divided into twos: right and wrong, good and bad, love and hate. But now we've firmly established that, have we not? God, I hope so. And all of life's apparent duos is the thing that I brought up in the last few nights. I want to see if you can see any connection with it. It's both subtle and complex. But in all of life's duos, there is an interest, whether it be readily seen, whether it even seems to manifest itself in one person's lifetime. But in all the duos, there is an interest. It is built in. There's the interest in some kind of search to come up with what would apparently be a third area. The elusive, like my E-force, I point out that people don't see. It's not taken into account. The things seem to be run at the ordinary level, physically and theoretically. It seems to be run. It satisfies ordinary consciousness as far as ordinary consciousness can be inconclusively satisfied. That two things, good and evil, that's it. Right and wrong, that's it. True and false, if you're a little less religious. That covers it, and of course it doesn't. Or why are you here? And all the duos, though, I'm telling you, I've been trying to work up these last few nights, sneak it in, there is built into this arrangement, though, a very low level, and as I said, oftentimes it does not seem to manifest itself in your perception, but it's there. That this duo has a built-in search, a built-in interest to find, to construct, to produce what seems to be a third area cushion. It is like a third area buffer between the contours between the first two, between those that seem to be a very distinct contour, such as between true and false. In the city, you'd have to be ridiculous to talk about any other possibility. Things are either true or false. Or if you're still dealing with people who are tied up in a religious nervous system, you'd say, all right, you people believe in right and wrong. They say, yeah. And you say, wait a minute, there's a third area. And they say, ooh, well, you're done for. You're part of the bad part, because there's no third area. You're either on the good guy's side or not. If you get into less religious areas and you try to talk to people and they say, all right, there's that which is true and that which is false. And they say, right. You say, there's a third area. You're nuts. You are not an intellectual. You belong to churches or somewhere, because things have to either be true or false. There is no third alternative. Built in, though, to the duo is this lingering, continual interest and a search, whether it manifests itself or not, I repeat, in your lifetime, to come up with what appears to be a third area that acts as a buffer between the two. It operates, and I'm going to say specifically, but I'm going to have to, of course, give you verbal descriptions of it, which are lacking, but I'm simply pointing you. It is a kind of cushion that's sought to help insulate the duo at any given time, one from the other. And it's specifically for the benefit of that which would be. I'm going to have to describe to you that we're always talking about a dance. There's always the dominant and the submissive, the more powerful and the less powerful. It is always to insulate the more powerful from the less powerful, the more complex from the more simplistic, the higher from the lower, the younger from the older. And it's for the benefit of the higher, not the lower. Never. That'd be suicide. The examples, I've already covered them, but I didn't do them this way, such as a monarch, one man ruling many, one man and then everybody else, whether it be a benevolent monarch or a despotic tyrant. If that line, if that family, if that ruler is firmly entrenched and he is a one-man seat of power. He will very shortly, apparently it's just life, come up with a court. And I mean a court in the real sense, not the physical court. He comes up with a form of his own regal bureaucracy. He comes up, it starts out that it's him and it's then the people. However he got there, he was born, let's do it the easy way, through heredity, he was born being prince of this group of people, this kingdom. Or if you see it easy the other way, some revolution, he comes in and he annihilates the previous rulers and he takes over completely. He had some followers, he had somebody to help. But then he takes over the power, and it's him and it's everybody else. In the word, it's the people, it's immediately obvious. No matter what he says, it's immediately obvious. If it's not, he'll bring up 2 or 3 people out of the crowd. You know, some of you people come up here and he'll kill them. And nobody raises a hand. Nobody. They don't even feel the inclination. They may be frightened, hope they're not next. But it just establishes, if your nervous system needed, if you're part of the crowd, we got one guy in charge and he's answerable to nobody. Now we understand. It will not be long, if that situation stays, a court will become established. He'll begin to grant out titles. He'll begin to create a bureaucracy. It becomes apparently a third estate. It becomes apparently a third area between the one man in charge and then everybody else who's not in charge. The one dominant figure and everybody else is submissive. The purpose of the bureaucracy, the purpose of the court, is so that when it becomes expedient, which it will to some degree, when it becomes expedient, the king will blame the people's woes on the bureaucracy, on the third area, on the court. Now, it can be, of course, varying degrees. I'm not going to stay out here in the apparent historical external examples that far because that's not our prime interest. But it can be that the time comes, instead of him just killing people, every time somebody raises an objection, he gets a little older, simply time moves on in one lifetime, and if he's got a bureaucracy, if he's got an apparent third area, and the people say, King, you know, we've worshipped you, we kiss your feet, and we blow kisses at you, and we send you our wives and children whenever you want them, but damn, 20 years you've been here, and we're still sucking on tar and chewing on bark, and him say, assume. They just reached the point, he's getting a little mellow, whatever description you need right quick. And he goes, really? I didn't know. Are things really that bad? They say, yeah, you didn't know? He say, heavens no. I told, hey, go get so-and-so, my prime minister of good food. And sure enough, there is one. And the king will say, I told you about 18 years ago that I wanted the people to start having some nice croissants and some fresh eggs every day to eat. And they just told me that they're still dealing with the damn bark and tar diet. And of course, things are arranged in such a way that the minister of good food, king never told him that, but the minister of good food, if he's about the court, he knows what's happened. He knows that he's about to go home to meet Jesus. He says, you have let me down. And he looked at the people like, I've been let down. The people go, oh, poor king. And there's them that's been sucking bark and chewing on tar for 20 years. And he says, what can you do when your underlings can't be trusted? And he'll turn around to the other people in the court like, well, did I tell him to do that or not? And the king don't really have to put it that way. He just looks at them, and they all go, since they don't go home and meet Jesus today, they all go, bad minister, bad minister. He had us fooled too. And they all look at the king like, God, we feel sorry for you. And the king looks at the people like, God, don't you feel sorry for me that he let me down? I tried to help you people. And they all go, oh. And they want to say, don't feel bad, king. It's not your fault. Two or three things. I'm going to try to push this a little bit further before the tape runs out. The duos are continually driven to, and sometimes they come out, and I was going to give you some real hard physical examples of good classic duos out there that do Now it seems to be, I can say, they get together and after a certain length of time, like a monarch, if you look at a monarch and the people, and then that combination, a structure builds up, and it appears at times to produce a third entity, a third area that acts as a cushion. It's never been looked at this way, and it's not that linear. It is not that you put those two together and they produce the other one. But I'm about to draw it out that way, especially on two-dimensional. When you see it on film and looking at it from out there, it looks two-dimensional. I was even going to draw an arrow, but it's not linear. You all should know that by now. How about the labor and capital? That seems, there's a dichotomy that's warmed everybody's heart from Marx to Engels and Lenin all the way back to pre-industrial times. The feudal eras, when you had the bureaucracy of the nobility, the landlords and then the serfs. There's always been those that apparently had the capital, and for years and years and years and years, it was whoever owned the land. They were capital, and everybody else was labor. It is a dichotomy that the contours are so close, they're so immediate, and they are so rough, because when you've got a contour that's that close, they're constantly rubbing. And over a period of time, there seems to be this thing developed called unions. And in a sense, this is not sequential. But in a sense, this is a fair drawing that labor and capital put together, given enough time, produces an offspring, apparently, of a third type. In this case, unions. And a part of the great misdirection again is the unions seem to be, without any doubt, a man would have to be an idiot to say otherwise, they're to serve and for the benefit, and they're not. They're always for the benefit of the higher, the more powerful, the more complex, at the expense of it's to protect the higher. Law forms, I'd already used the monarch, but put together the state in the full sense of the word, and the citizens. That's been a historic dichotomy, a historic argument leading to bloodshed, wars, revolutions. They produce, let me put it simply, legal systems. It's really, if you can follow from what I was saying the other day, it's a form of constitutions. It appears to be predictable ways in which, I'm going to put it to you the nice way to start with, it seems to be predictable guidelines wherein the citizens expect to exercise some amount of freedom, some right, some protection against the weight of the state. And a couple of nights ago I put it to you a little more directly, if not crudely. It's the apparent expectations that the powerless have about the particular ways in which they're going to get kicked around by the powerful. But given enough time in any locale at any time between the state and then what seems to be the citizens or a citizen, it will produce some form of constitution. Even if the state is a monarch, there's one guy. If he stays there long enough, not only the bureaucracy, there will get to be, if not written, and normally it gets written, but if not through social custom, expectations of how, even this one guy with unlimited power, how he's going to treat everybody else. And to bring it more up to date, it turns into a kind of a form of jurisprudence of how the people expect to be treated. I guess maybe one more is enough, but here's one I bet you'd never expect. How about, back when the good old folks believed in such, between God and man? Now there is it. If you want to talk about the dichotomy of the powerful and the powerless, and they produce what? Religions. Which is again, I will have to point out to you, is an extremely splendid example of bureaucracy. The eternal inconclusive statement, no one is to blame, but it produces apparently, I'm still talking about the nervous systems in times past and even those now, that fully believe, that they just fully feel that there is some external force, let's go ahead and call it God, and then there's man. Now talk about a gulf. Forget about a monarch and the serfs. Phew, that's bad enough. That they're almost in two different worlds, although they're in that same little area of England or Saxony. But the real dichotomy, the real gulf is between God. I mean, what else can you say? The big vanilla, the ultimate pickle, and me. There has to be the apparent third area that acts as a cushion. Enter religion. A kind of ultimate, at least in the spiritual sense, bureaucracy. Let me do one more. If you can follow this, there is one even better than this. Man and his own genes. Now, that's not how ordinary people think about it. Man in the struggle with himself. But I'm just getting a little more specific for you since the tape's running out. Man and his genes, and it produces what? It produces a third area. That is, what seems to be the internal conflict in everybody produces not a union, not a new religion, not some new system of jurisprudence. It produces the place to lay the blame. It's not my fault that I'm in competition, that I'm in a struggle with myself. No. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be here running off my mouth at some stranger at a poor 7-Eleven store making $3. That's my damn wife. She's driving me nuts. Just me worried about my job. Listen, I could be ruining my health drinking as much as I do. You think I like it sometimes? I don't. After years of drinking, I can't say I like it. You don't know. I grew up. They threw me out of an orphanage. It was bad enough I was there, and even the people in the orphanage threw me out. I mean, I can't help it, and I can't afford analysis anymore. That is a form. I was going to let it stay at religion. Can you see that it is the appearance of a third area, and it cushions the higher and the lower? And I'm not going to say which is which here. But it acts as a cushion. It acts as a kind of insulation of one of these from the other. Up here is kind of insulation. Maybe that was easier to start with. And I point out it is not what seems to be the obvious, that everyone would tell you that unions, I mean, it's just ridiculous, right, for me to go any further. Unions for the benefit of labor. As a matter of fact, who belongs to unions? Labor. And it's not. It's to help insulate them from them. It's to help insulate the king, the monarch, from the people. Down here, the idea that there is an out there is a culture, there are external circumstance, which is just as plain to consciousness as it is that unions are for labor. I mean, it's ridiculous for me to say otherwise. Who belongs to unions? Labor. Who votes on contracts? Labor. Who is labor against? Them. So if they're using that, it's obviously for their benefit. Capital would hate labor. Wrong. The people should hate the bureaucracy. The king should hate the bureaucracy. Man apparently in conflict with himself in some way. We've been through, I've talked all kinds of ways to simply, you all know this, everybody on this planet except those who are working for life in a particular way, the real go-getters. Everybody else feels incomplete. Everybody else feels like things are not right. Everybody else feels like I should be doing better, whether they're religious, whether they're philosophical, no matter what they are. I'm just putting it right now, since the tape's running out, a little closer. It's man, whoever you are. Fred, Mary, Ethel, Hubert. There's you, whatever you feel you are right now. One of the passing members of some oligarchy or aristocracy, or whether you feel as I am, a monarch. But the monarch has got to have people. There wouldn't be a monarch. The oligarchy may be more than one person in you that you feel may be in charge, but still is everybody else. So there is this dichotomy in you and everybody. It's man and his own genetic background. The man being whatever you perceive yourself to be at city level at any given time, ordinarily known as human consciousness. There is a conflict. There is a dichotomy, and one of them needs protection from the other. One of them needs a cushion. One of them needs to be buffered. One of them needs an insulation. And it needs to be something that the one that one of the parties is trying to insulate itself against, the other parties must believe that what's being done is for their benefit. Unions are for the benefit of labor. But they've got to believe that. It's got to appear to be that way. At city level, it is that way. Me saying it's not is ridiculous, of course, because in the city it is. I'm not right. Well, of course, I'm always right. Others are to blame. It appears to be for the benefit of one of the parties over here on the left-hand side of my arrow. But since I've already pointed out to you that in the glaring case, it is obvious that unions are for labor. Only labor belongs to unions. Labor fights management and capital, so it's obvious, and I say it's not. That at that level, it's exactly the opposite. It's for the benefit of capital. It's protect the more complex and more powerful from the more powerless. Then down here, what seems to be the obvious? Try and use your great gland, your analogous gland, that if it's wrong and backwards with capital and labor producing unions, then down here, whatever seems to be obvious, man and then his genetic background producing the others are to blame syndrome, all right, whatever seems to be the correct one, hint, 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 hint. Hint, hint, hint. Hint. We're completely out. Well, I didn't tell you, did I? I was going to give a little excursion. Never mind. Bye.